Hello darlings, it's Tess, and right now I just want to show you my outfit. I'm very proud of it. So here we have my Art Nouveau kind of princess dress situation, and then because it is winter I've put this new purple jumper under it that my mum got for me. And then of course I've got my purple witch hat on because today I think I have maybe my witchiest video ever, and that's because it is the tale behind the scenes, the feelings, the thoughts, the emotions of me going to Cloudcatcher Witch Camp in the Queensland hinterlands a few months ago now. So this is gonna be like a really long video. I have a lot to tell you, so let's just go. So I subscribe to the lovely German witch, the Witch's Cookery, Belle, and she over the past couple of years have put together these amazing camps in the German countryside, and I watch her videos about them and they're just so beautiful. And I wanted to go so badly, so I searched to see if there was anything like that in Australia. I searched on the Facebook, like, witchy and pagan groups that I'm on Facebook. So I found Cloudcatcher, and at first I was a bit put off because, like, it was in Queensland, which is a while away. I'm in New South Wales, a different state. But also obviously I was like, nah, I don't really have the money for something like this, I'd have to fly up there as well as the ticket, blah, blah, blah. But then I researched it a bit more and I realized that each year they have a theme, right? And this year's theme, the story kind of thing, the goddess they were honoring was Brigid. And if you guys have been here for more than 5 minutes, then you know that Brigid is my goddess. She is the Celtic goddess of creativity and the forge and fire and the well. And she's just amazing, but I mainly look to her for creativity and fire. So I knew it was absolutely once in a lifetime and I'd regret it forever if I didn't go. So I scraped my money together, helped along greatly by the fact that the incredible orgs of the camp have scholarships available so that more people are able to get to camp when maybe otherwise they wouldn't have. So I had a discounted price because of that, which was just absolutely incredible, and I'm so grateful, and it gives you just the perfect idea of how amazing the camp orgs are. It was also my first 100% solo trip anywhere, because I've flown on my own before, mainly from my from Sydney to my dad's house in Hobart and then back again. I've done that a million times now. But in terms of like doing everything, like the whole trip is my idea. I'm managing the finances, I'm booking the flights, I'm taking time off work, I'm answering all of the questions for registration that needs to be answered, I'm keeping track of all of the different practical things that are unfolding as camp comes nearer. We got a few emails about different things being reorganized. I was figuring out my packing list on top of like normal travel things, but also like how many witchy things to take in my travel altar, and also like how many art supplies, because that as like Brigid being a creative goddess, like I'm gonna take a good amount of art supplies there so I can, have my little moments and maybe create some things in ritual and such. And what I found amazing about it all when I was doing it was I realized how calm I was about it. Because past Tess was so twisted up with anxiety of just every form that the idea of flying alone, like I said before, where even if one person is literally dropping me off and is there at the gate when I board the plane, and then when I come out of the plane, someone else is there. Like, even doing that, like, completely destroyed me. Whereas now I'm able to, when I go to Hobart, I pack myself, I get in the Uber, I go security, I do this, I do that, like all that stuff that is just completely normal. Once upon a time, it was not normal, and it is for me now. Whereas now I was doing like all of the organizational stuff that I mentioned, and it's me alone, and I'm going to spend 5 days with a bunch of total strangers, and yet I was just completely excited, and I was like, you know, bring this the F on. Like, it made me realize how far I have come in terms of how bad my anxiety used to be versus how it is now. So that was a little like sideline amazing experience of witch camp. The one thing that did get to me though is the fact that I can't drive. Is it stupid to be nearly 30 and not be able to drive? Absolutely. But have I been getting like soul-sucking anxiety and car crash nightmares since the age of 15? Also yes. So, yikes. As I said, camp was in the hinterlands, just up into the mountains a little bit. And there was no like public, like a coach or a bus or a train or something like that to get there. And for the camp orgs, they have enough to organize already, and so it's our responsibility to get to camp, which like for me was incredibly stressful, because I wasn't able to just get there and like hire a car and just drive myself, which, you know, it was the first and only time that I've been looking at myself thinking about the fact that I can't drive and really going, okay, you just, yeah, this is bad. like most of the time when I'm in Sydney, not being able to drive doesn't matter, because the public transport's so good, I can walk everywhere, I can blah blah blah, it's totally fine. So because there's such an amazing community for witch camp, a lot of carpooling is done each year. But because of that, it means that like it's kind of very haphazard to organize, because not everyone has room in their cars, and like it's just a whole thing. So I was incredibly worried about that, because that was the only thing that I had no control over. Like, where do I have to be? What airport am I going to? Where is my ticket? What do I pack? All of that stuff is to do with me. Whereas, you know, sending the energy out into the world and just being like, please let someone have room for me when we drive up, like that was completely like to do with somebody else. So that was like incredibly freaking stressful. But I like, yeah, so that was bad. So I didn't get my actual carpooling ride 100% cemented down, no questions asked, until about a week before camp. So I didn't technically know that I was going until that moment. So that was insane. And so that was just, yeah. But to calm my nerves before that happened, I actually created a sigil for safe travel to camp. Because when you're an art witch, when in doubt, you create something visual. So this is my grimoire that I took to camp, because I wanted it to have some blank space. So this is the sigil that I made. I'll give you guys a closer up look at it. And basically this is a sigil for safe travel to camp. That was my statement that I broke down, because I used the method of taking a statement, breaking it down into the letters and then the numbers, and then you put them on a clock face, and then you draw around, and it creates the shape. And normally you erase the circle, but I kept the circle because it made it look like a compass, and safe travel north, south, east, west, blah, blah, blah is where I needed to go. So that was really cool. I loved how that sigil turned out, and I was able to kind of put my energy in and stop worrying a little bit about it when I was doing it. And just so you know, I have made sigils before about various things, and to my recollection, all of them have worked. Like, really. So I did my sigil for camp. 24 hours later, I get the ride. I'm bouncing off the walls. I'm not mentioning names of anybody in this video in case people don't want to be identified, but let's say I got a ride with an absolutely amazing woman who has been a witch for 60 years, and also an amazing non-binary being who ended up being one of my instructors in my beginner's path, like learning thing that I did each day. So there was some stuff that I already knew because it was the beginner's path, but there was also plenty of stuff that I didn't, and also just things that I'd heard about sort of by extension, like, you know, these are the kinds of group rituals that you can do, these are the parts of the rituals, you cast a circle, you do this, you do that. A lot of that stuff I knew conceptually, but had never done it because I've been a solitary witch this whole time. So doing it all in group stuff was like pretty insane. Everything was obviously really intense for me and for everyone, so I wasn't whipping my camera out most of the time. Like, I've actually got almost no footage from camp. And I think it's because like, I've actually got almost no footage from camp, and I think that's because I was just too busy experiencing everything to kind of film either myself or to be asking other people if they wanted to be filmed as well. And I'm sure a bunch of people would have said no, maybe a bunch of people would have said yes, but I was kind of just a bit distracted and I didn't really want to do it. I don't have that much, so the majority of this video is me talking to camera, which I usually try and avoid, but there's, you know, no way around it for this particular one. So I do have to describe the rituals and feelings and ideas and things to you because you can't see them. But then again, seeing the footage would make this video so much longer, and you can probably tell it's going to be long enough. So on day one, I'd flown in the morning, and we all got there at about mid-afternoon. So we got in a big circle in the main room and we did our acknowledgement of country, which is where you obviously acknowledge the fact that us white people do not own the land that we're on. It always was and always will be First Nations Australian land. And so we did an acknowledgement of country before every single thing that we did, every time someone spoke, every time we did anything. So that was our first one. And then everyone went round and said their name and pronouns. And all I could think was, like, all these hippie, queer, disabled, they, thems with, like, shaved heads or purple hair and activist tattoos and combat boots. So, you know, all of my people, if some absolute, like, white, capitalist, cishet, racist, misogynist, transphobic, dickhead, dude, banking millionaire walked in, he would have, like, burst into flames. Like, it was just the best thing ever. So I went to my dormitory, like the ones that you have at school camp, with the room with, like, the bunks in it. and I unpacked everything, and then it was time for dinner, and then after that was night ritual. And we had ritual or some kind of event every single night while we were there. I brought my very special glittery notebook for all my feelings and trains of thought and spells and learning and such. So throughout this video, I'll be reading you sections of it that I wrote down in Path or in Ritual or before bed or whatever. Day 1, 6:48 p.m. Why am I silent? Because I was. You would think I would have plenty to say to other people at like a Brigid theme witch camp, but for some reason I was just kind of locked up inside. 7:04 p.m. The thought of crying in Ritual or Path has me halfway to tearing up already. Should I admit how jaded and hopeless and bitter I've become? Yeah, that's an interesting entry. 10:48. I did actually cry during a part of Ritual where we were all wandering around, and then you would kind of stop and have this moment with whoever was closest to you. And so I was crying for that, and we did it 3 times to different people. So strangers had to look at me like, so that was pretty interesting. So we then lay on the floor and they taught us keening, which is an old Irish way of sort of calling out in mourning. You might associate it with banshees, but it's a human thing that you can do as well. They gave us a particular melody that went with a Gaelic word, but because I can't speak Gaelic, I can't remember the word or the tune, so that was bad. But we were just kind of saying it over and over in sort of a trance-like state. We then started calling out like individual things that we were in mourning for, and so obviously I was calling out for people that I physically lost, like my dear Yaz, who you guys have seen in my Greta Van Fleet video. But I also said something about like the time that I've lost in my youth during pandemic, and like how how sad it's made me. Like I just kind of, I can't remember if I was the only one who said that, but like it just walked into my head to suddenly be like, yeah, like I genuinely would love to say, yeah, pandemic, that was a bit weird, but life goes on. When in reality, it hit me so hard and took so much away from me, and I really am still recovering, because it came at such a specific time in my life where all the things that it took away were like supposed to happen at that moment. I wanted them to happen straight away. And so now, all these years later, like some of them, like they're still a mess, and it's just, it's bad. So while we were keening, I said something about that. I didn't do the whole explanation like I just did. I think I just said pandemic or, whatever I said. So yes, I nearly cried again when we were doing that. And then we went to bed, and the next morning, my very, very nice roomie told me that I snored, which is brand new information. I have stayed over at friends' houses so often, most often my dear bestie Luca, and no one has told me that I snore before. No one. So yeah, that was brand new information. So day 2 opened with kind of this perpetual silence from me, but I was trying to wake myself up a bit by thinking about Ritual last night and how my wand, which I carried everywhere at camp, you guys have seen my wand, I made it myself, it had felt like part of my hand and not something that I was holding. Like that's how perfectly it fit into my palm, and that's how long I was holding it. Like it felt like part of my arm, part of my hand, and not something I was holding. We learned something that we did before every ritual that I'd personally never done before, which was actually not just casting a circle or invoking the deity that you're working with, but actually calling on the elements to help you as well as any other energies. So I wrote down a few things that people called out for ideas. So earth is soil, roots, and there you go, very nice. Earth is soil, roots, and flowers. Air is imagination and stars. Fire is protection and summoning. Water is tears and healing, and then spirit is the stars and the unknown. When we were working and learning, I kept hearing birds every time we were quiet outside. Like, obviously we were away from the city noise and everything, so it was impossible to hear that, but like, I know that just because you're in the mountains doesn't mean that it's going to be constant bird noise, but it was. Like, the birds just would not shut up. I was constantly hearing them. We did some kind of imagining thing, I think, because I've just written, I'm usually in a grave clawing up for happiness, but Brigid just lifted me out. We did another vision work on air, and I turned my wish for a creative career into this bird in like a rainbow cloud. I was like, my brain was like rainbow bird in a normal cloud or white bird in a rainbow cloud. Like, my brain just was flicking between those. If it was a white bird, I kind of wanted to call him Fredsfegel, which is a Swedish name that I'm probably mispronouncing, because a girl in a story that I'm writing has a pet dove called Fredsfegel because she's Swedish. We then did a circle of ideas for fire, just kind of throwing them in. I wrote some down from everyone, and they include reckless, charcoal, cleansing, chaos, forging a sword, burning weeds, re-emergence from orbit, I love that one, and obviously dragons. Someone said that, probably me. We then did some moon magic stuff that I was mostly familiar with, like the phases and stuff of what I mean, what it means rather, and you know, dark moon is for divination and such like that. But we also did this kind of fear release thing where everyone put their fear into the middle of the circle that we had, and we just imagined it as this giant orb getting bigger and bigger, and then we threw it out the window at the moon. So ritual that night was pretty freaking insane. We were riffing off fire and water of what we were focusing on. So we went from kind of like insane, like chanting and dancing and drumming and like literally just, it was just, we were inside out of the rain, but it was literally just like, imagine a whole bunch of people doing the classic, you know, witches dancing like under the moon, and they look like they're possessed by demons, and except we were just possessed by, like, you know, Brigid and like fire and water, so, you know, nothing to worry about there. So that was our state for fire, and then a few times we kind of brought ourselves back to earth by lying on the floor like pools of water. And so we kind of had this switch and switch a few times over, and I was just completely losing track of time. Before ritual though, the most amazing thing happened while everyone was kind of getting ready to come in. I went in and there was nobody there. And I had this moment next to this giant Brigid's doll that some people had made out of local plant life. And so I just went and kind of laid next to her, like next to her leaf skirt. She was resting against the wall, and so the skirt was touching the floor. And so I laid there, and I put my hand on one of the leaf strands that came down from the skirt, and I just felt her energy in the moment. And you know, I kind of suck at living in the moment, so a lot of camp was me trying to sort of clear my head and try to do that. And then this cricket started chirping inside the skirt, like it had traveled from outside into the room, and it was chirping its beautiful little song like 2 feet from my face. It was crazy. And I know I was the only one or the first one to hear it because no one had mentioned it before. And you know, in a witch camp, if there's something as magical as a cricket coming inside in the giant Brigid doll, you know, word is going to spread pretty quickly. So I was the first one to kind of have this moment, which was just nuts. I felt very, you know, chosen, shall we say. The room was strung with fairy lights, and so under these kinds of human stars, I gave her a name. Her name is Celeste the Cricket. She's a fae messenger, so I named her under the fairy lights. So that was like, that was amazing to have this little moment with her. Maybe crickets are a messenger for me now, I don't know. But when I was lying there, Free by Florence and the Machine just started playing in my head, and my whole brain was just going round and round with this cricket and with Florence, because one of the biggest embodiments of Florence that I see in terms of people is Florence. Like, she's got the red hair, and she like is this amazing like ball of fire performer. She's a force of nature, and yeah, like she's just a Brigid. She is a Brigid like embodiment, if you ask me. At some point I wrote down the words, "Whoever hates me is wrong, including me." I can also see, "My heart is on fire, but fire cannot kill a witch." So while the music was going, it was the deafening drums, it was the chanting, I was trying to find sort of new ways to dance, not just like sort of vibing around like this. And I found myself doing the movements that Florence and her dancers do in the music video for Big God. If you haven't seen that, so that was like, I can't remember what I did, but I remember I just kind of went into that and my brain was like, I definitely got that from somewhere, and then I remembered later. Someone did a word piece where they were talking about how there's iron in exploding stars, and then there's also iron in human blood, which I obviously knew. So I was like, oh my god, like, you know, there's exploding stardust in my blood, and my blood is in the exploding star, and I was just completely tripping on that. And the whole time I had my wand in one hand and my lucky dragon Daenerys in the other. So they both carry, you know, they're just molten with that whole energy from ritual, and they're gonna carry it forever. So this monster length video is now finished. And I'm exhausted, but I hope it gave you some good vibes and convinced you that being a witch or a pagan is just the most amazing thing. Just embrace your weirdness. Like, I can't say that enough. And if you live in Australia, I hope this can convince you to come to Cloudcatcher camp next year. And yes, I am absolutely talking to people that I know personally who I want to kidnap and take. Anyway, comment down below if you are also a witch or a pagan, so I can follow you and be a very dedicated lover of your magic. Subscribe for more art and witchiness and positivity from me. And remember, I love you. Keep going.